Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Dana with the Data Quick Takes. And today we are talking about reparations. Yes, honey, with a twist. Now, President Donald Trump withdraws the United States from key climate treaty and dozens of other groups dealing with the UN. So, U.S. President Donald Trump has withdrawn the United States from dozens of international organizations, including many that work to combat climate change. Oh, God. Now, 66 affected bodies are UN related, and Donald Trump administration is calling it not only woke, but racist. Yeah.
President Donald Trump has signed a major executive order withdrawing the United States from a controversial United Nations forum that he says promotes a global diversity, equity and inclusion reparations agenda. On January the 7th, 2026, President Donald Trump issued an executive order directing the United States to withdraw from the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, a body established to elevate issues affecting people of African heritage worldwide. According to US officials, the decision was prompted by what they describe as the forum's advocacy for race-based policies and a global reparations agenda, positions the Trump administration says conflict with the US Constitution's Equal Protection Clause and American values. The administration previously accused the forum of advancing racial grievances and having victim-based social policies. US officials also argued that the UN body violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott declared that America will no longer lend its credibility to racist organizations. The United States is proudly withdrawing from racist organizations such as this forum. He added, radical activists who embrace DEI ideology and seek to compel the United States to adopt policies mandating race-based wealth redistribution in organizations such as the UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent will no longer be entertained. The UN Permanent Forum on People of African Descent was set up to address issues including racial inequality, discrimination, and historical injustices. Critics in Washington have taken particular aim at agenda items they claim to go beyond traditional diplomacy, including proposals for financial compensation for descendants of slavery and colonialism, as well as calls for reparatory justice in emerging fields like artificial intelligence. The body had previously argued that only reparatory justice can address what is described as technology-enabled racism in fields such as artificial intelligence. The forum's supporters argue that these discussions are part of a long-running UN effort to confront systemic discrimination and uplift historically marginalized communities, a message that's at odds with the White House's framing. This move is part of a wider rollback of US participation in international institutions, a strategy that has seen Washington exit dozens of global organizations and treaties this week alone. In the same executive action, the Trump administration also pulled the US out of 66 international bodies, including climate, health, human rights, and development organizations that the White House labels as contrary to American interests. Senior officials have defended these decisions, saying that they will refocus US resources on national priorities rather than global agendas.
Now, here's the thing. I support and agree with President Donald Trump and the Trump administration on this. Why? Because it does not represent Black Americans. Not only that, it does not benefit Black Americans for even having these organizations in the UN in the first place. So here is Secretary Marco Rubio. And this is what he posted on X. President Trump's withdrawal from 66 international organizations sends a clear message that it is no longer acceptable to invest the American people's hard-earned tax dollars in institutions that cannot demonstrate results, accountability, or respect for our national interests. Absolutely. And I agree with that. Now, here's what the State Department posted on X. We are rejecting the outdated model of multilateralism that treats the American tax dollar as the world's underwriter for a sprawling architect of global governance. President Trump's withdrawal shows that the era of writing blank checks to international bureaucracies is over. Absolutely. Because this was billions and trillions of dollars going out to these international NGOs supposed to be under the skies of United Nations, to other countries benefiting foreigners and not the American people, specifically Black Americans. We weren't seeing none of this. We weren't going to never benefit from this. Now, I want to highlight the executive order. So this is the executive order that President Trump signed on January 7th, withdrawing the United States from international organizations, conventions, and treaties that are contrary to the interests of the United States. I'm not going to read all this. You guys could go to the whitehouse.gov and read it, but I wanted to highlight the list of the said organizations. So these are the organizations from which the United States shall withdraw. Carbon-Free Energy Compact, which is BS. Commission, Environmental Corporation, whatever. Freedom Online Coalition, who cares? But I want to scroll down, right? And bring your attention to this. Right here. Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. So when you Google, Trump says no to reparations and withdraw from the United States, he's talking about reparations for Africa. He's like, hell to the no. United States is not an American Express card. We are not paying for reparations for Africa or the Caribbean or South America or anywhere else in this world. And I agree with him because I looked up Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. And this is what I found. Now, who and what is this organization called Permanent Forum on People of African Descent? Who are they? What do they do? Who do they represent? Are Black Americans included in this? I don't think so. This is clearly just for the continent of Africa. So scrolling down here, you see all of these, different non-governmental organizations. So it's just one organization after another. You have the main organization, Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And when you go to that organization, they have dozens of other organizations. One in particular, LGBTQIA plus human rights defenders. Scroll down a little bit and you see the Pan-African Development Forum. And we all know that Pan-African has never benefited Black Americans. And then I see here, Toronto Black Farmers and Food Growers Collective. Well, what about the Black farmers here in the United States? I don't see no organizations listed here in the UN for that. We are not included in this. What do they call themselves? People of African Descent.
Heads of state and government are deliberating here at the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa. This year, the continent has set for itself a theme that will focus on justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. The African Union seeks to recover what is owed to Africans both on the continent and in the diaspora, acknowledging the profound harm caused by the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Western countries, including Portugal, the United Kingdom, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, and the United States of America, played major roles in the slave trade. But how will the African Union achieve the long-sought justice? Some countries in Africa are already demanding what is rightfully theirs from former colonial powers. The DRC, for instance, wants compensation from Belgium. The European country has acknowledged exploitation, racism, and acts of violence in the DRC. Namibian communities whose ancestors were brutally killed in the genocide perpetrated by German colonial forces and had their property seized more than a century ago want Germany to own up and formally apologize and pay reparations. France, which dominated more than 20 countries in Africa, is losing its colonial grip. Countries like Ivory Coast, Chad, Senegal, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have cut military ties with France and ordered French troops to leave their territories. In Kenya, the scars of British colonial atrocities during the Mau Mau struggle for independence remain alive more than 6 decades on. The African Union says colonial powers that took away what belongs to Africa should be made to pay. It says continued recognition and documentation of the impacts of colonialism and slavery on African societies are crucial for the evidence to remain. According to the African Union, compensatory payments to African nations and communities affected by colonial exploitation could involve colonial powers investing in infrastructure, education, and healthcare to support economic development. Africa wants land to be returned or communities to be compensated for lost territories. The continent is demanding that lost African heritage be restored through funding for cultural institutions, education programs, and the return of cultural artifacts. All this, the African Union says, can be done by involving diplomatic pressure or even legal actions at the international level. And this is one of the continent's key priorities in 2025.
Remember this? The African Union? I did a show on this because the African Union had this year of reparations in 2025, justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, which excluded us here in America. Do you guys remember this? Because now this is another subsidiary from the African Union. The African Union 6th region USA. See, this is how they were going to incorporate so-called Black Americans with their Pan-African Black diaspora reparations claim, because they need us to really make it happen. But Black Americans, we weren't falling for it. So this isn't going nowhere, and it's definitely not going to be funded to any type of capacity under the Trump administration. But again, this still does not benefit, nor has it represented Black Americans. Why? Because you have a lot of Black immigrants here in America that's going to latch on to our claim of reparations. See, they're going to call themselves Americans because they're American citizens, but their lineage is not of the United States of America. Africa can never and will never get reparations for anything. Africa needs to pay reparations to Black Americans. African Union 6th region global promotes investments. Again, has nothing to do with Black America. So when I say that I support President Donald Trump withdrawing from dozens, over 60 organizations from the UN because they support DEI, the reason why I support that, because I know for a fact it does not benefit Black Americans, and I'm only concerned about America and Black Americans. The African Union does not represent Black Americans. The African Union does not have a special place for us there. But they are going to, again, like I said, use our suffering, our history of our suffering here in America, use our plight here in America so that they can get their hands on billions of dollars of American money. But Trump is putting a stop to that. But then some people may say, well, he's against reparations. We're never going to get it under a Republican or under a Trump administration. I'll get to that a little bit later, because it is what he said here in this clip, which gives me hope, not even hope, which lets me know that never mind that he said he's against reparations or Republicans are against reparations, so are the Democrats. It's not about what somebody says. It's about what they do. He's not giving money to Africa or anywhere else internationally under DEI. We don't need DEI here as Black Americans. Why? Because we have the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment solidifies us and legitimizes our fight for reparations and restitution.
Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people.
He highlighted the 14th Amendment, and that is very important because that solidifies Black American lineage here in this country, in this nation. Africa is not entitled to reparations from the United States. For anything, Black Americans need to start suing some of those Western countries in Africa for reparations, right? And it's bad enough, like he pointed out in this clip, that illegals they receive billions of dollars of American taxpayer dollars. The illegals actually received the reparations that Black Americans should have gotten, and restitution. They got free health care, free education, free housing, monthly checks, food stamps, everything. Work permits, mopeds to go to work, red carpet. So if Kamala Harris would have actually won the presidency, best believe billions of dollars would have been going to the African Union and all those other United Nations organizations for reparations for Africa.
Today, I'm deeply honored to reintroduce H.R. 40, historic legislation to establish a federal commission to examine the lasting legacy of slavery, to develop reparations proposals for descendants of enslaved Africans. It is an honor to inherit the privilege of carrying this bill forward. Amen. From Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. In my last correspondence with her, she said, keep working on our priorities and never give up. We're at a critical inflection point in America, and the moment cannot be more urgent. With Black history under attack and white supremacy emboldened, there is no better time to introduce this bill than during Black History Month. More than 4 centuries ago, Africans were kidnapped, trafficked, and enslaved, forced to build this country under horrific brutality, an economy which we still benefit from today. This brutality, these injustices, these horrors were not things just happened within the culture by osmosis. They were legislated. Today, with Donald Trump and Republicans waging their coordinated and at times unlawful assault on Black folks and Black history, we will not allow that history to be erased. We will not allow it to be whitewashed. H.R. 40 is a powerful reminder of the work that remains and offers us a pathway toward truth, reconciliation, and accountability. To be clear, this bill is not a symbolic gesture, but rather a meaningful step toward repairing the deep structural injustices that continue to harm Black communities today. Whether you are in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Trenton, New Jersey, or Mattapan in the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, this is about ensuring that every person has a fair chance at the American dream. We're in a moment of anti-Blackness on steroids, and we refuse to be silent. We will not back down in our pursuit of racial justice. And while we do the work of resistance and blunting the many harms of this hostile, anti-Black administration, it's imperative that we continue advancing an affirmative agenda for Black America and building momentum toward this critical priority. So today we have a choice. We can continue to uphold an unjust status quo, or we can work actively to disrupt it. We can allow our history to be erased, or we can actively engage in truth-telling. We can and we must confront our past and take meaningful steps to repair the harm that has been done. H.R. 40 is an opportunity to do exactly that.
Everything she said is a lie. It's a lie. She's lying. You are 5 years and $1 short late. The last time Congress held a reparation hearing, and it wasn't even the main congressional hearing, it was a subcommittee hearing. That was in 2021. Under the Biden administration. The administration that represented Black people, that did so much for Black people. No, it actually did the opposite. It did the opposite. Because if you really was serious about reparations for Black Americans, you Democrats, Congressional Black Caucus, then you would have moved the reparations hearing from out of subcommittee to the main committee floor. But it's funny, when Trump get into office, now Representative Presley and all these other, coons in the Congressional Black Caucus want to start talking about reparations. You are 5 years and $1 short late. And am I saying it right? It's a day late and $1 short. You are 5 years late and $1 short. That's how you're supposed to say it. Yeah. So, no, we are never going to see reparations from the Democrats. We may not even see it from the Republicans. But is it a possibility that we can get reparations? Yes, definitely on a state level. But we have to work within our politics. We have to get involved. We have to put people in positions in office that are going to represent our needs. We have to fight and petition for our reparations, because it's not about race. It is about lineage, which is why I agree with Donald Trump withdrawing from 66 organizations from the UN that is, under the skies of DEI, because it's all race-based. See, Africa and this Pan-African reparations, they're saying anyone with black skin is entitled to reparations. And that is not the case here in America, because it's about lineage and not about the color of your skin. It is about your lineage. And when it's about the lineage, it does not go against the Constitution. It is not illegal. It is not a violation of civil rights. If it's about race, then you are going against the Constitution. Then you are violating civil rights laws.
You're going to have an unending influx of immigrants into the country. And that's what Dr. Price is talking about. And nobody, no black politician, no black organization wants to deal with that issue. They will avoid it at all costs, even though in their hearts they know that's one of the biggest problems for black folk. We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2,
you said something earlier in an answer where you said that you talk about native blacks. And so that clearly sounds as if you are delineating native blacks versus someone that comes here from Bermuda or Jamaica or wherever they may they may come from. The purpose of that is what? Because you're on the surface, it would be like, hey, everybody here that's black gets treated a certain way. Why are you making that delineation?
That is an excellent point. You know why? Because you see, those people coming in from Jamaica or coming in from Africa, they have not been treated like black folk in this country. That's the first thing. And secondly, historically, they haven't had those historical experiences. They come in here voluntarily. When they come in here, they bring some cultural aspects from Africa. They can go back anytime they want. But the black people in this country are exceptional people. Nobody's been mistreated, maltreated like them. The black folk are exceptional. They're the only people that came here forcefully, one. 2, they're the only people that denied their humanity. 3, they were the only people denied a right to enjoy the fruits of their labor. 4, they were the only people denied the right to participate in government. 5, they were the only people denied the right to vote. 6, they were the only people denied the right to have an education. 7, they were the only people denied the right to have a business. 8, they were the only people that participated in every war that this country has had since its founding, but whose mother country has never been against this country. All those immigrants come from countries where they fought America, and they came in. And the 7, that they are the oldest and most patriotic people in the country. Not the Confederates in the South. They're not the most patriotic people waving the Confederate flag. The most patriotic people in this country are black people, native blacks, because you see 99% of all those blacks have been direct descendants of slaves. They've been here before 99% of all the other people ever arrived in this country. They are special people. And because they are special people, they need to be recognized, appreciated, and reparated for what they've done in this country and building this country. They're the ones that built the bridges, the roads, cut the timber, the trees, cleared the land, raised the tobacco, cotton, indigo. They're the people that fought to raise in every war to protect this country. The people coming from Africa or coming from Jamaica didn't. They came here voluntarily. And the most important point on this is if you lump them with black folk, then you give the dominant white society a justification to say we don't owe black folk anything. Mm-hmm. Because you see, the blackness that's native, the blackness, black people's blackness is more than just color. It is their heritage, it's their history, it's their code of conduct, and more importantly, it is their badge of honor, and it symbolizes the indebtedness that this country has to them. This country does not have an indebtedness to people coming from Africa. Mm-hmm. They only have an indebtedness to people coming in from the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. If you lump black folk in there, you deprive black folk of the benefit, the debt that's owed them. Don't do that.
Listen, and this is why I love Dr. Claude Anderson. He speaks truth and knowledge. And not just that, he actually gives you the blueprint. he gives you the blueprint of what to do and how to do it to get reparations, to get restitution. And my God, if my generation and the younger generations after me, if we don't get it together, then Black Americans, our lineage, our heritage, our culture, our rights to reparations and restitutions will be buried, will be gone. And part of that is because of Black immigrants commingling when it comes to the census and the data, commingling with Black America. When we have that label of African American. No, I'm not an African American. I'm a Black American. And everything he said in this clip is the reason why Donald Trump is withdrawing from these 66 UN organizations, because those countries are the very same countries that hate America, fought against America in some type of capacity. Never mind if we went into your country and did whatever. Never mind that, because that's just the way of life. But if a country such as United States come into your country and abstract resources, why would you, as a native of that country that's being pillaged, will want to come to the country that destroyed yours? Anyway, Dr. Claude Anderson lays it out why it's very important to delineate. He doesn't get enough credit. I don't play his clips. I don't talk about him as much, which I'm going to start, because it has to be said. You have to have this type of knowledge. If we're going to fight and get reparations here in the United States, we need to follow Dr. Claude Anderson blueprint.
Which is actually quite interesting, because I got a call from the Foundational Black American Society here in Florida, who reminded me that Byron's mother is Jamaican, he is Panamanian, and they found it quite insulting, in their words, that he would try to claim victimhood of slavery, not a single descendant of American slaves in his family.
I like those foundational guys.
They're so good.
Tariq Nasheed and all. I mean, I don't agree with everything, but they've got a perspective. If your family's been here 400 years, and the descendants of a lot of American slaves or families have been here 400 years, I don't know. I think that gives. I'll listen to you. Like you've 100%. You've got a point of view that is legitimate, I think.
Yeah. And they're unequivocally heritage Americans.
That's for sure.
100%.
I mean, they're definitely heritage Americans, if anyone is. And, someone rolls in from Ghana and gets an MSNBC slot and starts speaking on behalf of Black people. It's like, shut up, honey. You've got nothing to do with this.
Right.
That's
Literally.
a fair perspective,
right.
I think.
And so it's good to actually see them call them out for that. That's actually cultural appropriation. Appropriating the struggle of slavery.
I totally agree.
And the struggle of slavery was real. I don't think Republicans ever want to really whitewash that. It's real, right? But for
we're
Byron,
against slavery.
We're against it.
Whether it's in the, West Bank or here or anywhere. Yeah, against it.
But secondarily, to actually go out and try to gaslight us and think that you're just one of those guys that has been here, since the early 1800s and your family was in the struggle too. You're not. And that's a very interesting term that the Foundational Black Americans use. It's called tether. They're tethering these tethers like Byron Donalds. They come here literally one generation in, and they try to just sit around and act so folksy that we're all part of the same struggle and we're all down on and we need to fight against. No, you just got here, dude. Like the Haitians, like the guys from Ghana who just got here. You don't get to just be a part of our system and then lecture us about how our country went wrong.
He has a great point. He made some good points, and I appreciate that. However, what is Tucker Carlson talking about something? I'll sit down and talk to him. Dude, no, he said I'll listen to him. Well, whether you want to listen to us or not. And this is the problems that I do have with white people. We don't need your permission. We don't. Only thing Black Americans, what we need to do is actually participate in politics where we live at, locally, on a state level and a federal level. We don't need white people permission. You could disagree. You could be anti-reparations, white people. That don't mean that we're not going to get it. We don't need your permission. If Tariq Nasheed is invited on Tucker Carlson's show, that'll be a good look. He probably will go have a good conversation. But Tucker Carlson, is it Carlson or Carlton? Carlson. He is not the go-to guy to give us the green light. And just the way he's like, oh, his tone was like, oh, they're cute, right? But and I'm also going to do a video about Byron Donalds because he is running for governor, and this guy here is, I believe, his opponent. So, and I want to dissect what was said in this particular interview, but I wanted to highlight that because even, of course, to their credit, both of these men, to their credit, they know the importance of delineation. You cannot come here yesterday and claim our suffering and claim the restitution and the benefits that is warranted and deserved for Black Americans. Something that we never got, that we should be getting, that my ancestors never got, that I should be getting, right? You can't come here from another country and claim that. You're not part of that cloth. You're not. And it's a completely difference. Dr. Claude Anderson broke it down. You didn't go through chattel slavery. You didn't go through Jim Crow. You didn't fight in every single major war here in America, going back to the American Revolution. You weren't discriminated against. You weren't lynched. You were not. You weren't whipped. So you can't claim that heritage. You can't claim our lineage because we are the same skin color. You cannot. And that is why I support Donald Trump withdrawing from the United Nations 66 organizations, particularly the ones talking about reparations. We ain't paying Africa shit. We ain't paying nobody nothing. However, we damn sure don't be needing to paying Ukrainians nothing either. It's bad enough Obama cut a check for Jewish people for the Holocaust, and the United States has nothing to do with that. Look it up. Obama cut them a reparations check. Now, it probably wasn't as much as France and Germany, but he still cut them a check for millions of dollars. The United States, we are not an open checkbook under the Trump administration, and I respect that.
Those people coming in from Jamaica or coming in from Africa, they have not been treated like Black folk in this country. That's the first thing. And secondly, historically, they haven't had those historical spirits. They come in here voluntarily. When they come in here, they bring some cultural aspects from Africa. They can go back anytime they want. The people coming from Africa or coming from Jamaica didn't. They came here voluntarily. And the most important point on this is if you lump them with Black folk, then you give the dominant white society a justification to say we don't owe Black folk anything. Blackness is more than just color. It is their heritage. It's their history. It's their code of conduct. And more importantly, it is their badge of honor. And it's what it symbolizes the indebtedness that this country has to them. This country does not have any indebtedness to people coming from Africa. They don't have any indebtedness to people coming in from the Bahamas. If you lump Black folk in there, you deprive Black folk of the benefit, the debt that's owed them.
Monahan came up with a policy by the late 60s saying, or early 70s saying, it's time for us to move from focusing on Black folk to focus on Indians, Hispanics, and women.
Now, when immigrants come in, watch the benefits they get. They go past Black folk at 200 miles an hour. They do better right here in Chocolate City. Now, they're underneath the immigrants. Immigrants, they come in the country, they get a point over Black folk for being an immigrant. Blacks are the only none. Two, all of them are classified as whites. The Arabs, Asian, Hispanic, they all been reclassified as whites. Even American Indians back in the 1890s became classified as whites. They get a point. That's the second point. They get over Black folk in getting access to resources and benefits. The third thing they get the benefits of being put into a minority category. They're classified as minorities over Black folk. Thirdly, they come in with a culture that they can establish a culture that they can now build businesses and industries and relate back to their homeland. And lastly, what they can do, they also bring in their religious aspect and business opportunities for their people. Black folk get nothing, and they can come in and take and dominate Black folk.
Because they keep trying to create allies with them. You cannot ally with anybody who's planning on supplanting you. If you check the National Hispanic Defense League, if you check the National Hispanic Party, the first thing that all of them have is to change the issues in this country from white and Black to white and Hispanic. They're planning on supplanting you. When the National Hispanic Party started in Miami, that was the first item on their agenda, saying by the year 2000, they want to take blacks out of the equation. That's why they control South Florida.
Hispanics are whites passing as they're whites. They've always been whites. Up until 1970, all Hispanics in the United States and the world were classified as whites. They're just white folks speaking Spanish. And so they can come in all they want to. They can come in illegal or legal and get into the country. But see, they even come in from Cuba. When Castro cleaned out the prisons, he put to clean out all the prisoners in Cuba and put them on boats and sent them to the United States. And the United States accepted them. And now they're talking about black folk. Well, black folk got criminal, they got crime.
Don't even waste your time even chasing affirmative action anymore. It's been destroyed. It was supposed to be helping black folk. How do we become equal to blacks? And that's when the Hispanics jumped up this thing called Hispanic, the concept. Before that, we didn't have anything called Hispanic. But they thought in the early 60s that black folk might get some out of the civil rights movement. So what they did, they went to the table and came up with a whole term called Hispanic. They said, let's go all over the world and find everybody that speaks Spanish and pretend they're equal to black folk. And let's pretend that the Spanish language has been handicapped, Jim Crowed, enslaved, hung, lynched, decapitated, and everything else, and therefore is entitled to be treated like a black.
So I support the Trump administration withdrawing from those 66 DEI UN organizations. It does not benefit America, and it damn sure don't benefit Black Americans. And that's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Dana with the Data. Bye.
Dana with the Data. Dana with the Data.